The cake hit with a wet smack, chocolate frosting exploding across Eleanor's crisp white blouse like a Rorschach test of their crumbling marriage. Elena's hand trembled in the aftermath, the empty plate clattering to the tiled floor of the Barcelona bistro, where flamenco guitars still strummed faintly from the speakers, oblivious to the war that had just erupted between them. "You think this is funny?" Elena hissed, her voice a venomous whisper that cut through the murmur of other diners, her green eyes blazing with a fury born of too many unpaid tabs and unkept promises. Eleanor sat there, stunned, the cool stickiness seeping into her skin as if it were the final punctuation on 5 years of love letters written in invisible ink. She was 32, with the kind of effortless grace that turned heads in the narrow Gothic quarter streets. Tight curls pinned back, full lips parted in disbelief, her dark skin glowing under the amber pendant lights like polished mahogany. Back in Seattle, she'd been the one who fixed things. The leaky faucet in their Queen and Row house, the overdrawn bank account after Elena's latest business venture flopped. But here, in this sun-drenched exile they'd called a second honeymoon, the roles had flipped like a bad coin toss. It started innocently enough, or so Elena told herself later, staring at the Sagrada Familia's spires piercing the twilight sky from their Airbnb balcony. They'd arrived in Spain 3 weeks ago, fleeing the gray drizzle of the Pacific Northwest for what Elena had pitched as our reset button. Elena, at 34, was the dreamer, the one with the MFA in creative writing gathering dust on her nightstand, churning out freelance pitches that never quite paid the rent. Her auburn hair, usually a wild cascade, was tamed into a loose braid that morning, freckles dusting her nose like cinnamon on latte foam. She'd grown up in a sprawling suburb outside Chicago, the kind with white picket fences and PDA bake sales, where her coming out at 17 had been met with hushed prayers and conditional love. Eleanor, though? She was the anchor, a software engineer from Atlanta's bustling black creative scene, where family barbecues meant collards and candid talks about intersectional feminism over cornbread. The bistro was Elena's idea. A hole-in-the-wall off La Rambla, with checkered tablecloths and walls plastered in faded bullfight posters. Their 5th anniversary. She'd splurged on the tasting menu. Patatas bravas sharp with smoked paprika, gambas al ajillo sizzling in olive oil, and that damn chocolate torte, dense as regret. The wine had flowed, Tempranillo warming their veins, loosening tongues that had been tied for months. Elena had been venting about the emails from home, her sister's latest dig about wasting your talents on that phase, her father's radio silence since the wedding, and then the bill. Folded neatly, presented with a flourish by the waiter who eyed their intertwined hands with polite indifference. Spain wasn't Seattle after all, where rainbow flags fluttered from every coffee shop. Elena reached for her wallet first, a habit from their early days when she'd insist on treating, to prove she wasn't the freeloader her family whispered she was. But it was empty. Again. She'd meant to transfer funds from the joint account, but the ATM fees in euros had eaten into her freelance strip, and Eleanor's card, well, Eleanor had been clear. No more covering the gaps until Elena got her shit together. The words hung between them now, unspoken but electric. "You didn't even look," Elena spat, her Chicago accent thickening with adrenaline. "Just sat there, scrolling your phone like this was some tapas truck stop." Eleanor's eyes, those deep pools that had once pulled Elena under like the Duwamish at high tide, narrowed. "I looked. And I saw you hand him that sad little €20 note like it was supposed to cover the whole thing. We're not in Kansas anymore, Elena. Or whatever cornfield you crawled out of." The other patrons pretended not to stare. A cluster of German tourists snapping photos of their sangria, an elderly couple sharing churros in the corner, but the air thickened, heavy as the humid Mediterranean night pressing against the windows. Elena's chest heaved, the injustice of it all bubbling up like the cava they'd toasted with at midnight on New Year's in Plaza Mayor. How dare Eleanor reduce her to this? The woman who'd whispered "I do" under a chuppah borrowed from Elena's Jewish aunt, who'd inked Elena's name on her forearm in looping script during that rainy weekend in Portland. In a flash, the tort was airborne. It wasn't planned, God no, but the plate felt like an extension of her rage, the one she'd swallowed since her mother called their marriage a mistake last Christmas. The splatter was biblical. Frosting arcing like confetti from a ruined parade, landing in globs on Eleanor's collarbone, trickling down to the V of her blouse. A gasp rippled through the room, the waiter freezing mid-stride with a pitcher of agua con gas. Eleanor didn't flinch, didn't wipe it away. She just stared, her full lips compressing into a line that Elena knew meant storm clouds gathering over the Atlantic. "Is this what we've become?" she said, voice low, laced with that southern drawl that could soothe or slice. "You throwing tantrums because the world's not handing you your novel on a silver platter?" Elena's knees buckled, but pride kept her upright, gripping the table's edge until her knuckles blanched. "You act like it's easy for me. Like I chose to be the one who can't keep a job. You with your tech salary, your TED Talk invites." "Stop." Eleanor's hand shot out, not to strike, but to grasp Elena's wrist, firm as the grip she'd used during their first dance at the reception, to Cardi B remixed with Nina Simone. The touch burned, a reminder of mornings tangled in Egyptian cotton, of Eleanor's laughter echoing off Gaudy's mosaic tiles as they wandered Park Güell at dawn. "This isn't about money. It's about you not seeing me anymore. Not seeing us." The waiter hovered, murmuring apologies in broken English, comping the dessert with a nervous flourish. But Elena yanked free, storming out into the alley where motorinos buzzed like angry hornets, and the scent of churros mingled with diesel. She didn't look back, didn't hear the chair scrape as Eleanor rose. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a drum solo in the empty Callahan, tears blurring the neon sign of a nearby bodega. Back at the apartment, a cramped piso alto with creaky wooden beams and a balcony overlooking the Mediterranean, Elena paced the terracotta floors, the argument replaying like a scratched vinyl. She'd booked the trip on points from Eleanor's miles, a surprise to reignite the spark dimmed by Elena's string of rejections from publishers. Her manuscript, a semi-autobiographical novel about a queer expat unraveling in Madrid, was her baby, her beast. But agents called it too niche, not marketable enough. Eleanor's encouragement had soured into sighs, then silences. Hours ticked by. Midnight came and went, the city alive with laughter from below. Elena curled on the wrought iron bed, the sheets still scented with Eleanor's coconut oil, and wondered if this was the end, the kind her therapist back home warned about, where resentment metastasized into goodbye. When the door finally creaked open at 2 a.m., Elena bolted upright, her braid undone, hair a fiery halo. Eleanor stood in the threshold, cake remnants scrubbed but not erased, her updo frayed like her patience. In her hand, a paper bag from the all-night panaderia down the block. "I got you this," she said, voice raw as gravel. She set it on the nightstand. A fresh enzyma spiraled pastry dusted with powdered sugar, Elena's guilty pleasure. Elena's throat tightened. Why? Because throwing food doesn't fix us. But talking might. Eleanor sank onto the bed's edge, close enough that Elena could see the faint scar above her eyebrow from a childhood bike crash in Grant Park. "I paid the bill, Elena. Not because I have to, but because I want to. For us." The words hung, a lifeline tossed into churning waters. Elena reached out, tentative, her fingers brushing Eleanor's knee. "I'm sorry." "God, I'm so sorry." Eleanor's hand covered hers, warm, steady. "I know. But sorry isn't enough anymore. We need more than this, more than Spain or Seattle. We need to fight for the real thing." They talked then, through the witching hour, voices overlapping like waves on Barcelona beach. Elena confessed the fear gnawing at her. That she'd never measure up, that her family's ghosts would always haunt their hearth. Eleanor admitted her own cracks, the pressure of being the strong one, the black wife in a world that still side-eyed their clasped hands in high-end bistros. By dawn, as the first light gilded the balcony, they lay entwined, not lovers yet but survivors. The cake incident was a scar, not a severance, but scars itch. And in the days that followed, as they wandered the labyrinthine Bari Gothic, sharing gelato under Gothic arches, the itch grew. Elena threw herself into revisions, typing furiously on her laptop in sun-dappled plazas, while Eleanor sketched wireframes for a queer-inclusive app on her tablet. They laughed at street performers juggling fire, stole kisses in the shadow of Casa Batlló. Yet, beneath the romance, fissures lingered, like the time Elena snapped at a vendor over haggling prices, or when Eleanor's phone buzzed with a job offer back home, her face clouding. One evening, as they picnicked in Parque de la Ciudadela with Manchego and Membrillo, Elena broached it. "What if we stayed? Turned this into our life?" Eleanor's fork paused midair, olives glistening. "And what about my career? Your book? We're not running away, Elena. We're building." The words stung, but Elena swallowed them, opting instead for a detour to the zoo, where flamingos preened in roseate indifference. That night, lovemaking was fervent, a reclaiming. Eleanor's hands mapping Elena's freckles like constellations, Elena's lips tracing the curve of Eleanor's collarbone, clean now of frosting ghosts. It was tender, urgent, a bridge over the abyss. 2 weeks into their Spanish idyll, the fracture line spiderwebbed across their fragile peace, starting with a phone call from across the Atlantic that neither saw coming. Elena was mid-sip of her courte-du in a Placa Rail cafe, surrounded by palm fronds rustling like conspirators, when her screen lit up with Mom. She'd ignored the voicemails piling up, pleas wrapped in passive aggression about family holidays, and when are you coming home? But this one felt ominous, the ringtone a siren in the midday bustle. Eleanor, sketching nearby with her stylus flying over digital canvas, glanced up. Answer it. Rip the Band-Aid. Elena did, steeling herself as her mother's voice crackled through, thick with Midwestern frost. Elena Marie, your father's had a stroke. Mild they say, but he's asking for you. When are you flying back? The world tilted. Elena's courte-du sloshed, staining the wrought iron table. What? Why didn't you call sooner? We did. But you're off gallivanting in Europe with her. The pause was a chasm, the word her laced with the same disdain it had carried since the wedding photos hit Facebook. Eleanor's pen stilled. She knew that tone, the one that reduced her to the help in family lore. Despite her PhD in computer science and the down payment she'd fronted on their Seattle home, Elena waved her off, mouthing family drama. But the call dragged, her mother's litany of hospital bills and, you owe us this, hammering like rain on a tin roof. By the time Elena hung up, her face was ashen, freckles stark against pale skin. Dad's okay, but they want me there. Now. Eleanor nodded, ever the pragmatist, pulling up flight trackers on her phone. We can change our tickets. B-Wheels up tomorrow. We. Elena's laugh was brittle, echoing off the arcade's mosaics. Mom made it clear, solo trip. Family time, she called it. The words landed like shrapnel. Eleanor's jaw tightened, that telltale flicker in her brown eyes, the one that said, not this again. Back home, Elena's family had been a minefield. Thanksgivings where Eleanor was seated at the kids' table, Easters with side eyes over her locks before she chopped them for this trip. Elena always promised to push back, but promises were cheap as street paella. You're going alone? Eleanor's voice was even, but her fingers drummed the table, a Morse code of hurt. Elena reached across, squeezing her hand. Just for a week. To smooth things over. Then I'll fly back and we finish our adventure. Montjuic Castle at sunset, remember? But Eleanor pulled away, folding her sketchpad with deliberate care. Smooth things over. Like last Christmas when you forgot to mention our commitment ceremony? Or the time your sister posted that passive-aggressive Bible verse on Instagram after we visited. The cafe's chatter faded. Pigeons cooing accusations from the eaves. Elena's cheeks burned. That's not fair. They're my blood. And I'm your wife. Eleanor's whisper was a thunderclap, drawing glances from a nearby table of art students nursing vermouth. In the eyes of Washington State, anyway. But to them, I'm the phase you outgrew. Elena recoiled, the cortado's bitterness rising in her throat. Don't make this about you. Dad could have died. Eleanor's laugh was hollow, echoing the empty alleys they'd wandered hand in hand. Everything's about them, isn't it? The invisible tether pulling you back to that cul-de-sac life you swore you'd escaped. The argument simmered on the walk back, weaving through human statues and guitar buskers. Elena's strides clipped, Eleanor's measured. By the apartment, it boiled over in the kitchenette, where oranges from the mercado rolled across the counter like discarded dreams. Elena slammed her laptop shut. Another rejection email from a New York lit agent blinking accusingly. You think I want this? She yelled, auburn strands escaping her braid like flames. To choose between my dying father and the woman I love? You're the one who said, in sickness and health. I meant ours. Eleanor shot back, her dark eyes flashing like polished onyx in the slanting light. Not propping up their bigotry because it's easier than fighting. The room spun, terracotta cool under Elena's bare feet. She grabbed the nearest thing, a half-eaten pan de muerto from Dia de los Muertos Echoes, and hurled it, not at Eleanor but at the wall. Crumbs rained, a soft betrayal. Eleanor didn't duck. She advanced, closing the gap until they were inches apart, breaths mingling with the scent of citrus and salt. "You break us a little more every time," Eleanor murmured, her hand cupping Elena's cheek, thumb tracing a tear track. "And I let you because I love you. But love isn't infinite, Elena. It's a garden. Neglect it and it withers." That night, Elena booked the flight in silence, the Ryanair confirmation a cold comfort. Eleanor packed for her with mechanical precision, underwear folded army-sharp, that silk scarf from their honeymoon in the San Juans. At the airport, dawn gilding the terminals like fool's gold, they clung in the departures lounge, Elena's head on Eleanor's shoulder, inhaling the familiar vanilla of her lotion. "Call me when you land," Eleanor whispered, pressing a conchus pastry into Elena's palm. "And remember, you're not theirs to define." The flight to Chicago was a blur of turbulence and regret, Elena staring out at clouds like cotton fields over the Atlantic. Her family greeted her at O'Hare with hugs that felt like shackles. Mom's perfume cloying, Dad frail in his wheelchair, bandaged but beaming. "Our girl's back," he rasped, patting her hand, oblivious to the ring on her finger that matched Eleanor's. The week stretched into a purgatory of hospital jello and hushed confessions. Dad's stroke had been a wake-up, high cholesterol from too many bratwurst, a lifetime of ignoring the cardiologist. Elena read to him from her manuscript snippets, skipping the queer threads, and he nodded approvingly. "Proud of you, kiddo. Always knew you'd make it big." But nights in her childhood bedroom, posters of Hemingway yellowed on the walls, were haunted by FaceTime calls with Eleanor. Grainy pixels showed her wandering Valencia's markets alone, buying saffron for paella she'd never cook solo. "It's beautiful here," Eleanor said one evening, the phallus fireworks blooming behind her like artificial stars. "But it's not the same without you." Elena's heart twisted. "I miss you. Mom asked about you today, said to say hi." Eleanor's eyebrow arched. That's progress. Baby steps." Elena forced a smile, but the screen glitched, severing the connection mid-laugh. The betrayal came on day 5, innocuous as a post-it note. Elena was rummaging for Dad's meds in the kitchen when she found it. A yellow square stuck to the fridge, her sister's handwriting scrawled in Sharpie. "Tell Elena. Congrats on the engagement pics. But seriously, therapy? For her issues." The her was underlined twice. Elena's stomach plummeted. Engagement pics? They hadn't posted since the wedding. Fury propelled her to the garage, where her sister Becca was sorting holiday decorations amid boxes of tinsel and trauma. "What the hell is this?" Elena thrust the note forward, voice echoing off concrete. Becca, 30 and married to a bland accountant, blinked doe-eyed. "Just concerned, sis. We saw the posts. Eleanor venting on Twitter about toxic in-laws. Thought you should know." Elena's world narrowed to a pinprick. Eleanor tweeting? She pulled out her phone, fingers flying to X, and there it was. A thread from @CodeQueenATL timestamped last night. "When your spouse's fam treats you like the help, but you still show up. Queer wives family drama." Retweets piled up. Hearts from strangers, a solidarity Elena envied. "You outed us," Elena whispered, more to herself than Becca. "To the whole internet." Becca shrugged, stringing lights with false cheer. "She started it. And honestly, maybe it's time you face facts. This marriage, it's not normal. Dad needs you here stable." The garage spun, Christmas bulbs mocking with their cheer. Elena fled to the backyard, snow dusting the lawn like ash, and dialed Eleanor. It rang once, twice voicemail. "We need to talk," she left, voice cracking. "Now." Eleanor's reply came via text, hours later. "Landed in Seattle early. We'll talk when you're ready. Love you." But love felt like a lie, stretched thin as the transatlantic wire. Elena boarded her return flight to Barcelona in a daze, the Midwest fading below like a bad dream. Spain welcomed her with rain-slick streets and a voicemail from Eleanor. "I'm at the apartment. Come home." Home. The word was a beacon, pulling her through customs and cabs. But when she pushed open the door, the piso felt alien. Eleanor's suitcase zipped by the couch, her tablet dark on the coffee table. "Eleanor." Elena called, heart thundering. No answer. Just a note on the kitchen counter weighted by that damn enzyma now stale. I saw the family pics you posted. Smiling with them, no mention of me. This is your choice. I won't fight for half a life. Safe travels back. Elena's knees gave out. Pics? She scrolled her Instagram, nothing. But Becca's account. A candid of the hospital visit. Elena hugging mom. Captioned family first. Grateful for the support. Blessed. No tags, no context, but the implication screamed. Betrayal double-edged. Elena's family had twisted the knife. Eleanor's tweet had primed it. She sank to the floor, pastry crumbling in her fist, sugar dusting tears onto the tiles. The rain pattered against the balcony doors, a dirge for what they'd built, and what she'd nearly broken. The rain in Barcelona fell in sheets that night, turning the Gothic quarter into a watercolor of regret. Gargoyles weeping from cathedral eaves as Elena stumbled through the downpour. Eleanor's note clutched like a talisman in her rain-sodden pocket. She'd hailed a cab to nowhere, Parc de Cervantes, where lovers usually picnicked under plane trees, but now it was a sodden sanctuary, benches slick with Mediterranean melancholy. Elena collapsed onto one, the wood groaning under her weight, and let the storm have her. Sobs racking her frame, mingling with thunder that rolled like God's indifferent applause. How had it come to this? 5 years ago, in a Seattle courtroom with rainbow bunting and a justice of the peace who winked knowingly, they'd vowed forever. Elena in a vintage lace dress from her grandmother's attic, Eleanor in tailored linen that hugged her curves like a promise. The reception at Alki Beach. Crab cakes and craft IPAs, Eleanor's cousins toasting with shots of bourbon, Elena's aunt, the one ally, raising a glass to love that defies the odds. But odds were statisticians in disguise, and theirs had been stacking. Elena's writer's block like a Berlin Wall, Eleanor's promotions demanding 80-hour weeks, the subtle erosions of you complete me into why can't you just. Elena pulled out her phone, screen fogged, and opened the Twitter thread. Eleanor's words hit harder in the deluge. Being the black wife in a white family ain't for the faint. But y'all, when do we stop code switching for love? Marriage equality my ass. The replies were a chorus, emojis of fists and hearts, stories from strangers about similar fractures. Elena's finger hovered over reply, then deleted drafts of apology after accusation. Instead she texted at the park. Please. We can't end like this. The wait was eternity compressed. Minutes stretching like taffy, each raindrop a reminder of her failures. When Eleanor's silhouette emerged from the gloom, umbrella in one hand, the other shielding her eyes, Elena's breath caught. Even soaked, Eleanor was a vision. Curls frizzing into a halo, navy coat belted tight, her stride purposeful as a panther's prowl. You came, Elena whispered as Eleanor lowered the umbrella, joining her on the bench. Water beaded on Eleanor's lashes like diamonds in distress. Always do, Eleanor said, voice soft but edged like velvet over steel. Even when it hurts. Elena thrust the note forward, sodden pulp now. This wasn't fair. Becca posted the photo, twisted it. I never chose them over you. Eleanor's gaze dropped to her lap, fingers twisting the umbrella's handle. But you didn't correct it. Didn't tag me, didn't fight. And my tweet? That was me fighting for us, for the world to see we're real. The admission hung raw as flayed skin. Elena leaned in, the space between them humming with unsaid sorries. I was scared. Of losing Dad, of them hating me more. But you're right, I've been code switching too. Pretending we're not a team because it's easier. Thunder grumbled, a punctuation to her confession. Eleanor turned, her brown eyes searching Elena's face, tracing the freckles, the quiver of her lower lip. Then stop pretending. Tell me. What do you want? The book, the family, the dream? Or us? Elena's hands found Eleanor's, cold but unyielding, interlacing fingers like lattice on a pie her mother used to bake. Flawed but holding. Us. All of it, but starting with you. The book's almost done. I finished the last chapter on the plane. It's dedicated to you. For Eleanor, who codes my heart. A ghost of a smile tugged Eleanor's lips, that dimple flashing like a lighthouse beam. Cheesy Chicago girl. You're cheesy. Elena's laugh bubbled up, fragile but free, chasing the storm's edge. They sat then, rain easing to mist, sharing stories like contraband. Eleanor's secret job offer. A remote gig with a Barcelona startup, queer-led, building apps for expat networks. I was waiting to surprise you, she admitted. But after the tweet, after the silence, I thought maybe you didn't want the surprise. Elena's heart swelled, a balloon against ribs. I do. We stay. Rewrite our story here, your code, my words. No more half-lives. The kiss that followed was cataclysmic, not fireworks but a slow burn. Lips tentative at first, tasting of salt and second chances, then deepening as hands cupped necks, pulling closer against the chill. It was the kind of kiss that rewrote maps. Eleanor's warmth seeping into Elena's bones, a vow sealed without words. Around them the park stirred. A jogger splashing past, a street cat shaking off droplets, the city exhaling into clearance. Back at the apartment they shed wet clothes in a trail to the bedroom, not for passion's sake but comfort's. Toweling hair slipping into flannel pajamas that smelled of home. Curled under the duvet, Eleanor's head on Elena's chest, they plotted. Visa hunts in the morning. Elena pitching her novel to a Madrid agent via email. Eleanor demoing her app to the startup over Zoom. We'll mess up, Eleanor murmured, fingers tracing Elena's wedding band. But together? Together, Elena echoed, kissing her forehead, the scar a badge of survival. Dawn broke golden, gilding the balcony where they breakfasted on fresh churros and thick hot chocolate, dipping and laughing as drips marred the morning paper's headlines. Elena's phone buzzed. An email from the agent. Intriguing voice. Send full MS. She hooped, spinning Eleanor in a clumsy waltz across the tiles, their joy echoing off beams like a new beginning. But humanity's arc bends slow, and their story wasn't without shadows. Elena called her family that afternoon, speaker on, Eleanor's hand in hers as she laid it bare. Dad's improving, but I'm staying in Spain. With my wife. And I need you to meet her. As family, not footnote. Silence stretched. Then her mother's sniffle. We'll try. For you. It wasn't absolution but it was a crack in the door, light spilling through. Eleanor, listening, squeezed tighter. Proud of you. Weeks blurred into a rhythm uniquely theirs. Mornings at the Mercat de Saint Josep, haggling for figs and feta. Afternoons in co-working spaces where Elena typed amid clacking keyboards, Eleanor debugging code with focused fury. Evenings were theirs, sipping vermouth on the beach, watching freighters at the horizon like distant dreams. The cake incident became lore, retold over sangria with new expat friends. A queer podcaster from Brooklyn, a painter fleeing Brexit London. You two are goals, the podcaster said one night, clinking glasses. Drama and all. Elena's novel sold in a quiet miracle, to a small press in Barcelona, translated into Catalan first, its pages pulsing with their truth. A white writer grappling with privilege, her black wife's unyielding light. The dedication read as promised, and at the launch reading in a bohemian libreria, Eleanor stood front row, eyes shining as Elena's voice filled the room. Love isn't a reset. It's a revolution. Cancer came whispering 6 months in, a shadow on Eleanor's annual scan, back home for a checkup that couldn't wait for Iberian healthcare. Stage 1, treatable, but the word alone was a gut punch, sending Elena spiraling into what-ifs. They returned to Seattle for chemo, the Emerald City a blur of 4 drips and ferry rides to Bainbridge for fresh air. Elena shaved Eleanor's head in their bathroom, the clippers buzzing like a vow, kissing the newly bare scalp smooth as river stone. You're still beautiful, Elena whispered, tears salting the skin. Eleanor grinned, fierce. Damn right. And tougher than your manuscript rejections. Remission came in spring, cherry blossoms rioting along Lake Union. Their anniversary marked not with torte but tamales from Eleanor's aunt, who flew in with hugs and hot sauce. Elena's family sent a card, stiff but signed by all, including Dad's shaky script. To both my girls. It wasn't perfect. Conflicts lingered. Elena's wanderlust clashing with Eleanor's rootedness. The world's gaze still sharp on their joined hands in conservative corners. But in the quiet moments, Eleanor coding by firelight, Elena reading drafts aloud, they found grace. Human, flawed, enduring. Years later, back in Barcelona for a book tour, they'd toast in that same bistro, cake ordered with a wink from the waiter now graying at the temples. To the splatter that saved us, Eleanor would say, clinking glasses. Elena, ever the romantic, would counter. To the woman who stayed speechless, no breathless, for me. And in the candlelight, with flamenco fading into night, they'd lean in unbroken.